The rain in Asaba did not wash away the mud. It only turned the red earth into a thick, swallowing trap. Adesuwa lay face down in the sludge, her useless legs trailing behind her like broken branches. Above her stood Favour, her own mother, holding a heavy polythene bag containing everything Adesuwa owned. Favour did not look down with tears. Her eyes held the cold, calculated precision of a woman cutting off a dead limb. "M.A., please," Adesuwa whispered, her fingernails clawing into the wet clay. "The market people will trample me." Favour dropped the bag into the dirt. "A child that cannot fetch water should not consume the soup. I have carried you for 19 years, Adesuwa. My back is broken and my youth is gone. Today, the market will feed you, or the earth will take you." The market women began to gather, their murmurs rising above the sound of the downpour. Favour did not turn back as she walked toward the waiting yellow tricycle. She adjusted her wrapper, stepped inside, and vanished into gray mist, leaving her firstborn child crawling among the banana peels and discarded fish scales. Adesuwa transitions from a paralyzing shock of parental abandonment to the raw, visceral instinct for survival in a world that views her body as a curse. As the market boys began to laugh, a heavy leather boot stepped directly in front of Adesuwa's dragging hands. The boot belonged to Chief Leo, a man whose name was whispered in boarding rooms across Lagos, but whose face was rarely seen in the village. He did not bend down to help Adesuwa. Instead, he watched her with a strange, clinical intensity that made the surrounding crowd fall into an uneasy quiet. "Whose daughter is this?" Leo asked, his voice cutting through the humid air. "She belongs to Favour, the bread seller," an old woman called out from behind a pile of yams. "The girl was born with dead legs. The mother has finally given up." Leo looked at Adesuwa's face, tracing the sharp line of her jaw and the distinct, almond shape of her eyes. A flicker of recognition passed over his features, replaced instantly by a dark, hard expression. He signaled to his driver, a massive man named David. "Put her in the vehicle," Leo ordered, "and find out exactly where Favour lives now." Adesuwa was lifted into the air, her useless limbs dangling. As the black SUV pulled away from the market square, she looked out the tinted window, realizing Leo's grip on her shoulder wasn't born out of pity. It felt like ownership. The desperation of abandonment mutates into a cold, creeping dread as Adesuwa realizes her savior might possess motives far more dangerous than her mother's cruelty. Underneath the vehicle's floor mat, Adesuwa's fingers brushed against an old, laminated photograph of her mother taken 20 years ago. The mansion sat behind tall iron gates on the outskirts of Enugu, surrounded by bougainvillea bushes that looked like blood spilled against the white walls. Adesuwa was placed in a small, sterile room on the ground floor. There were no crutches, no wheelchair, just a wide bed and a large window overlooking a courtyard where dogs roamed free at night. Chief Leo entered without knocking, tossing a thick manila folder onto her lap. "Your mother was not always a bread seller," he said, lighting a cigarette. "And you were not born crippled, Adesuwa." Adesuwa stared light-eyed at the medical papers inside the folder. The logos were faded from a private clinic in Port Harcourt dated 19 years ago. Her breath hitched as her eyes scanned the messy handwriting of a long-dead doctor. "What is this?" she demanded, her voice shaking. "Favour was my accountant when I started my shipping firm," Leo said, leaning against the doorframe. "She stole 30 million naira. When I tracked her down to that clinic where she gave birth to you, she made a deal to keep herself out of prison. But looking at these reports, she gave me a lie." Adesuwa's understanding of her own physical identity shatters as she confronts evidence suggesting her disability was not an act of God, but a calculated human design. The medical report stated clearly that the infant's spinal nerves were perfectly healthy at birth, but showed signs of chemical suppression 40 days later. For 3 days, Adesuwa did not sleep. She practiced dragging herself across the polished marble floor of her room, her upper body growing stronger out of sheer necessity. David, the driver, brought her food but never spoke, though his eyes held a strange pity whenever he looked at her legs. On the 4th night, Leo returned with an old woman whose eyes were clouded with cataracts. "This is Rachel," Leo said. She was a traditional midwife who helped Favour in the village before she fled to Port Harcourt. The old woman knelt by Adesuwa's legs, her gnarled fingers pressing into the flesh of her thighs. Adesuwa flinched, expecting pain, but felt nothing. "The mother came to me when the baby was 2 months old," Rachel whispered, her voice like dry leaves. She asked of the leaf that puts the limbs to sleep. She said if the child could run, Leo would see his own blood in the stride and take the baby away. She wanted a burden she could hide, not a child he would claim. Adesuwa's heart turned to ash. Her mother hadn't thrown her away because she was a burden. She had created the burden to use as a shield. The grief of being an unwanted, disabled child burns away, leaving behind a cold, lethal anger toward a woman who traded her daughter's legs for her own freedom. Rachel pulled a small, dusty glass vial from her cloth pouch, the exact sedative Favour had used for 19 years. The next morning, the iron gates of the mansion groaned open. Adesuwa pulled herself up to the window ledge, her chest tightening as she saw a familiar figure stepping out of a silver Mercedes. It was Favour, but the worn wrapper and cheap plastic shoes were gone. She wore expensive lace, her hair wrapped in a towering silk head tie. Beside her walked a tall, arrogant young man who carried himself with the easy grace of someone who had never known hunger. "That is David," Leo said, appearing behind Adesuwa. "Your mother's second child, the one she bought with my stolen 30 million. He just returned from London with a degree in business." Favour had come to negotiate. She believed Leo had taken Adesuwa to use as leverage for the old debt, unaware that the secret of the clinic had already been unraveled. From her position at the window, Adesuwa watched her mother laugh with the security guards, completely at home in an environment of wealth built on her daughter's ruined flesh. Seeing her mother flourish while wearing the proceeds of her suffering forces Adesuwa to abandon any lingering desire for maternal love, replacing it with a thirst for absolute ruin. Favour looked up at the ground floor window, her eyes meeting Adesuwa's, but instead of fear, a slow, mocking smile spread across her face. Favour entered the sitting room with David trailing behind her like a prince. She did not look at Adesuwa, who sat on a low sofa, her legs covered by a heavy blanket. "Lo," Favour said, settling into an armchair. "Let's not play games. You have the girl, but you cannot touch me or my son. The statute of limitations on that old company debt expired last year. I am a major shareholder in Accra Logistics now. We are untouchable." David smirked, adjusting his gold wristwatch. "We can buy this entire estate, old man. Keep the cripple if she pleases you. She was always useless to us anyway." Leo remained silent, pouring a glass of whiskey. He looked at Adesuwa, giving her the floor. Adesuwa pulled the blanket away, exposing her withered legs to the bright chandelier light. "You think you won, M.A., she said, her voice dropping to a dangerous whisper. "You think Accra Logistics belongs to you because you signed the registration papers with your name." Favour laughed. "Of course it does. Who else would own it?" Adesuwa endures a public humiliation from her own brother, using their arrogance as a smokescreen while she prepares to pull the rug from beneath their feet. Adesuwa reached into her pocket and pulled out a thumb drive she had obtained through David the previous evening. "You forgot one thing, Favour," Adesuwa said, tossing the drive onto the glass table. "When you opened offshore accounts for Accra Logistics 19 years ago, you used my birth thumbprint as the secondary beneficiary authorization because you couldn't use your own stolen identity at the time." Favour's smile froze. She looked at the thumb drive, then at David, whose arrogant demeanor suddenly vanished. "What is she talking about, Ma?" David asked, his voice cracking. "The London properties are tied to that offshore account. My tuition, my cars, everything." "She is lying," Favour snapped, though a bead of sweat broke out along her hairline. "She was a baby. She couldn't sign anything." "An infant's footprint is legally binding on a trust document when verified by the attending clinic, MMA," Adesuwa countered, her voice steady and terrifyingly calm. "Chief Leo didn't bring me here to hold me hostage. He brought me here to sign the release forms." Every asset you own is currently undergoing a forensic freeze. The illusion of the villain's absolute victory crumbles, shifting the balance of terror as Favour realizes her abandoned daughter holds the key to her financial lifeblood. David's phone began to ring frantically, the screen displaying the name of their primary bank manager in Zurich. David answered the phone, his face draining of color within seconds. "Frozen?" he whispered into the receiver. "What do you mean? Third-party litigation claim. We have a board meeting in 2 hours." He dropped the phone, turning on his mother with sudden fury. "You told me the past was buried. You told me she was just a village curse." Favour stood up, her expensive lace rustling. "Listen to me, Leo. We can divide it. 50-50. Let the girl sign the release, and you take half of the Accra shares." "I don't want your shares, Favour," Leo said, taking a slow sip of his drink. "I want what was taken from my family, and Adesuwa wants what was taken from her life." Adesuwa leaned forward, her hands gripping the edge of the table. "There's another document in that drive, MMA. The police report from 19 years ago regarding the night my father died in that mysterious kitchen fire. The father you told me abandoned us." The narrative expands from financial theft to a darker domestic horror, revealing that Favour's cruelty was systemic, generational, and lethal. Favour lunged across the table toward the thumb drive, but the security guard's massive hand pinned her wrist down before she could touch it. The heavy oak doors of the sitting room opened again. An elderly man in a wheelchair was pushed inside by a young nurse. His face was scarred, his breathing assisted by an oxygen tank. Favour screamed, a sound that rattled the crystal ornaments on the shelves. She stumbled backward, tripping over her own wrapper and falling onto the rug, the exact same way she had left Adesuwa, in the mud 4 weeks prior. "Papa?" Adesuwa whispered, her eyes filling with tears for the first time since the ordeal began. The man looked at Adesuwa, his lips trembling. "They told me you died in the clinic, my daughter," he croaked, his voice thick with emotion. "She told me the fire took both your legs and your life. She kept me hidden in a private home in Benin, paying the doctors with Leo's stolen money to keep me heavily sedated." David stared at the scarred man, realization dawning on him. This is your real husband? Then who was my father?" Adesuwa experiences a profound emotional collision as the ghost of her father returns, validating her existence while exposing the absolute depths of her mother's depravity. The old man reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a microcassette tape, recorded during his brief moments of lucidity 5 years ago. The tape played, filling the room with Favour's recorded voice from years past, arguing with a doctor about increasing the husband's sedation dosage. The evidence was no longer just about financial fraud. It was a decades-long kidnapping and attempted murder conspiracy. David backed away from his mother, his hands raised as if she were a venomous snake. "I knew nothing about this," he screamed. "I am an innocent party. I just got back from London." "You lived on the blood of your sister, David," Adesuwa said, her voice echoing with absolute authority. "Every luxury you enjoyed was paid for by the deliberate crippling of my body and the imprisonment of our father. You are not innocent. You are the consumer of the crime." Leo signaled to the guards. "Call the state CID. Tell them the Accra logistics case has just upgraded to a capital offense." Favour stayed on her knees, her high head tied lopsided, looking up at the daughter she had dumped like refuse in the market square. Adesuwa takes full command of the room, transitioning from a victim seeking answers to an ultimate judge executing an undeniable sentence. Favour suddenly grabbed a heavy brass statue from the side table, her face contorted with desperate, animalistic rage. Favour did not swing the statue at Leo or Adesuwa. Instead, she lunged toward her crippled husband's oxygen machine, her eyes wild with the realization that his survival was her death warrant. Before anyone could move, Adesuwa did something no one expected. Using the immense upper body strength she had built from weeks of dragging herself, she threw her entire body off the sofa, tackling her mother around the waist. The two women crashed onto the hard marble floor. The brass statue fell from Favour's grip, shattering the glass coffee table into 1,000 glittering shards. Adesuwa pinned her mother down, her arms locking Favor's shoulders against the floor. For the first time, Favour felt the physical strength of the child she had tried to make helpless. "You took my legs, May," Adesuwa whispered directly into her mother's ear, their faces inches apart. "But you forgot to take my hands." The physical struggle solidifies the power shift, demonstrating that Adesuwa's spirit remained unbroken despite 19 years of systemic physical oppression. The sirens of the state anti-kidnapping squad wailed in the distance, growing louder as they approached the mansion gates. The police officers burst into the sitting room, their weapons drawn. Within minutes, Favour and David were handcuffed, their expensive garments stained with the dust of the floor. David wept openly, begging the officers to check his clean record, but they threw him into the back of the patrol vehicle without ceremony. Favour stopped fighting. She stood by the police van, her eyes fixed on Adesuwa, who was being helped back onto the sofa. "You think you have won, Adesuwa?" Favour spat, her voice venomous even in defeat. "You will still spend the rest of your life in that chair. You are still a cripple." Adesuwa looked at her, a calm, beautiful smile spreading across her face. "I am sitting down, MMA, but today you are the one who has fallen so low that you will never stand up again." The police doors slammed shut, cutting off Favour's final curse as the vehicle sped away into the Enugu afternoon. Adesuwa sheds a residual trauma of her mother's verbal abuse, realizing that true mobility is found in justice, not just physical limbs. Chief Leo walked over to Adesuwa, handing her a new set of keys and a legal deed bearing her name. 2 months later, the black SUV pulled into the Nkwo Market Square in Asaba. The rain had cleared, and the afternoon sun beat down on the bustling traders. The market women who had watched Adesuwa get abandoned stood still as the door opened. A state-of-the-art motorized wheelchair was lowered to the ground. Adesuwa sat in it, dressed in a simple, elegant Ankara gown, her hair braided beautifully. Beside her walked her father, his health stabilized, leaning proudly on a walking stick. The woman who had spoken from behind the yam stepped forward, her eyes wide with reverence. "Adesuwa," she whispered, clapping her hands in awe. "The gods of our land have answered you." "The gods didn't answer me, Mama," Adesuwa said, her voice carrying across the quieted market. "The truth did. I came back to buy the land where my mother sold her bread." Returning to the site of her deepest public humiliation allows Adesuwa to overwrite her memory of shame with a historical monument of victory. Adesuwa handed a legal document to the market union leader, establishing a trust fund for every disabled youth in the district. In the female wing of the Enugu maximum security prison, Favour sat on a concrete floor. Her skin was dull, her expensive lace replaced by a faded green prison uniform. The news had just reached her through her lawyer that Accra Logistics had been liquidated, and all proceeds had been transferred to a foundation managed by Adesuwa and her father. David had been sentenced to 5 years for criminal conspiracy and receiving stolen property, his dreams of a business empire buried in a state penitentiary. The heavy iron door groaned open, and a shadow fell across Favour's cell. She looked up, expecting her lawyer, but found Adesuwa sitting in her motorized chair outside the bars. "Why are you here?" Favour hissed, crawling toward the iron gates. "To mock me?" "I came to give you this," Adesuwa said, sliding a small loaf of local bread through the bars. "So you remember the flavor of the life you chose, while you traded away mine." Adesuwa delivers the ultimate psychological payoff, confronting her mother from a position of absolute moral and social superiority. Favour stared at the loaf of bread, realizing that her name would be forgotten, while the daughter she threw away would be remembered forever. The sun rose over the newly constructed Adesuwa Center for Vocational Excellence in Asaba, built on the exact ground where the old mud track used to trap unsuspecting travelers. Hundreds of young men and women gathered for the opening ceremony, their cheers echoing through the clean, paved courtyard. Adesuwa stood at the podium, not on her feet, but elevated by the dignity of her achievement. Her father sat in the front row, his eyes shining with pride as he watched his daughter address the state dignitaries. She didn't speak of the mud or the rain, or the mother who had broken her bones before she could walk. She spoke of the future. They thought they buried me because they didn't know I was a seed. Adesuwa said into the microphone, her voice clear and powerful. They tried to take my walk, so God gave me wings. Adesuwa achieves total emotional freedom, transforming her personal vengeance into a structural sanctuary for others, leaving her past completely behind. You can break an African child's legs, but you can never cripple the destiny written by her ancestors.